Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome again to Cambodia Global Dialogue of Southeast Asia TV. Tonight we have the pleasure to talk about something not relating to the world, not relating to the region, but something very localized. Localized, I mean, not necessarily in Phnom Penh, but something has happened in the field, and as you can see today we're not dressed up. And I have the pleasure to cover today something relating to agriculture. Agriculture in transition, moving up the agriculture value chain. I don't know, but basically I want to focus a bit on what Cambodia is doing now in developing its agriculture sector. What are the challenges? What are the opportunity to move up the ladder of the value chain, supply chain? And what are the lessons learned, that we can learn from it? And today I have the pleasure to have a good friend, Stuart. Stuart,
good evening.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Before we go to the chat, a dialogue, perhaps I give you a few minutes to just say a bit about your background. How long you've been in Cambodia, your background a bit, and then so that the audience know what about yourself.
Great, thank you. I've been in Cambodia for about 1 year and 3/4, primarily working up in places like Battambang and Pailin and Samlot. So a lot of my experience is to do with maize, corn, soybean, looking at the value chain, but also looking at production issues in that part of the world. I decided to stay in Cambodia because I see massive opportunities in this country. It's a place that is growing. It's a place that had a tragic past, but now has the opportunity to come forward and join the rest of Southeast Asia and produce agricultural products that particularly Korea, China, and the rest of the region are interested in getting. Look, there's a whole range of different crops that you can grow in Cambodia. My focus has been on corn and soybean.
Yes.
But
are these primarily market-driven, or you're more just now looking from the production side first?
It's both. When I say market-driven, there is a large demand for maize, corn, particularly in Thailand.
For what's the end use of this?
It's called field corn, so that's a food product.
Yeah, it's a food product.
Primarily for animals, actually.
For animal,
Yeah, CP is one of the largest buyers of maize in this country, and a lot of that goes into processed products for animal feed, pigs, chickens, etc. There is some sweet corn in this country, but it's predominantly field corn where it dries out, you can then dehull it, take the corn off the cob, and then bag it up and then transport it to Thailand or Korea or China,
like
etc.
Red corn, right? I mean,
red corn and yellow corn.
Yellow
That's correct. Yeah.
So it's more animal feed, right? So it's more into the industrial value chain per se, no?
Yeah, that's right. It's look. Let me just say a few things about corn and the prices of corn. Just last weekend I was up in Battambang working on a corn project there. But what I see in the landscape is a large amount of cassava going into the country. Battambang has doubled its production area this year alone for cassava. Why is that? What's happening? Well, cassava prices are up.
Yes.
And so people are planting cassava. They can make some good money. It's approximately $240, $250 a ton. And in some parts of Battambang,
these are all for export, right? These are all people buy for export, huh?
Yeah, well, they can chip it, they can turn it into starch products, or they can sell the tubers, primarily again into Thailand. Look, when you can get 20 tons per hectare of cassava, I can understand why farmers want to go into cassava. But let's just think about what's happened in the past with cassava prices. A few years ago, cassava was $20, $40 a ton.
You're kidding me?
No, it fluctuates. Cassava is a widely fluctuating crop.
Yes.
Why I see great promise in corn is that corn has been on a steady incline over a long period of time. There is less fluctuation in the corn price than there is in cassava. So I have some quiet fears about the cassava price at the time of harvest next year in Cambodia.
May crash.
I won't say it will crash, but I'm just saying that people need to be cautious. Just look at the past as an indicator of what could happen in the future.
Yes. What dictate this fluctuation in cassava? Why the steady rise?
The steady rise in corn or cassava?
Cassava.
Cassava, there's it comes down to some production problems in Thailand sometimes.
Yeah. Okay.
They have what's called a mealy bug, which affects cassava. Corporations move in and out of buying cassava. You can buy cassava and add it to paper products. It's a whitening starch.
Whitening starch.
It goes into food products, of course, but companies move in and out according to supply of other products into cassava.
Yeah.
Corn, why has it been on a steady incline?
Okay.
Well, corn, in the US, you recall a couple of years ago when biofuels started up in the US, particularly corn was driven into that as a biofuel.
Yeah.
Now that raised the price of many other grain crops around the world. My Australian experience shows that sorghum, which is another grain crop, went along with corn because people are trying to source grain products for food and animal feed, and corn was being taken out of the market and being put into biofuels essentially. That's settled down a little bit, but look, you know, the world is growing in population. We need to feed people in this world.
It's clear.
China is a massive market. Korea has a government policy to seek out land and to seek out opportunities in other countries. Korea has made a big presence in Battambang, particularly with a very large silo in between Battambang and Pailin. They're seeking 40,000 tonnes per year in maize, approximately. And they'll fulfill it. They'll seek out markets, seek out traders in that area and fulfill that.
So I can still go back to my initial question to you, is it market driven? And I think in this case it is market driven. And it's interesting because, you know, Cambodia, we happen to be in a region that's quite dynamic. Asia, it's a little bit depressing. I was in Geneva a couple of weeks ago on this, on the discussion on the trade round. Things are not doing well. But when I fly back to the region, I feel this dynamism, you know. And the fact that, for example, Cambodia, we're part of ASEAN. And ASEAN, you know, is having many dialogue partners, you know, China, India, South Korea, you know, Australia, New Zealand. And to me, these are all, you know, market, you know, that Cambodia could tap, right? We have a lot of, I would say, still open space, per se. But having a market, you know, driving your production is great when the price of the market going is up. But how does, my fear more is that the Cambodians who are planting now, you know, they expect that the price is going to be up. But what you just said, that, you know, sometimes you have to be careful because the price is not necessarily going to be up there. It may crash. But psychologically, it's devastating because for them to shift crop is very, very, you know.
Let me give you a few examples from Australia.
Okay.
The reason why Australians are so successful at agriculture is that we are very efficient at what we do. Okay, we utilise technologies, utilise capital, and the limited water. As you know about Australia, we have very limited water resources, but we are some of the most efficient and highest producers of agricultural products in the world. We are not subsidised. The United States, Europe, other parts of the world, they subsidise their agriculture. Australian farmers receive nothing.
I know because, you know, in terms of subsidy, I know the feeling when we negotiate Cambodia accession WTO on agricultural subsidy. So now I understand.
Look, the key thing in Cambodia, I think, is to start utilising known technology that works. I'll give you an example of my project up in Battambang. We're doing a small pilot, 30 hectares of corn, south of Battambang. Now, we decided you could go through and plant by hand. Everyone does that. What happens is that you don't get that uniformity of growth in that crop. We've imported a precision planter from Thailand, originally from the United States. We have cleared 30 hectares. I've done comprehensive soil testing across that plot. That's something that doesn't happen often in Cambodia,
Yes, yes.
is doing soil testing
Yeah.
to get an understanding of what's happening in the soil.
Yes.
That's critical.
Yeah.
We then brought in some seed from Thailand. I'm working with a colleague in Thailand to...
Yeah.
He has a great hybrid corn. Now, that's again something that's a technology. So the technologies we're using is soil testing, applying appropriate fertiliser for that particular soil. We're using a precision planter, so we will get good soil depth, a good seed depth in the soil. It is what's called a no-till planter. So what that means is that, sure, in the first year we have to till up the soil and we break it up and break up those roots, get the soil into a condition where the roots can penetrate through. But after that, we need to start thinking about the future of that soil. The soil health is the key to a crop. So what we want to do in the future is not till that soil again, not actually dig that soil again. Now you might be thinking, why, you're growing a crop, why don't you want to dig up the soil? Well, the whole point is that we want to maintain cover on that soil. We want to try and protect that soil. In the tropics, here's an example. I was recently at a conservation agriculture workshop. In temperate regions, when you continually dig the soil and till the soil, you will lose half the carbon content in that soil in 21 years. Okay. Just through breakdown of organic matter and continual breaking up of the soil. Now, in the tropics, where we have higher moisture, higher heat, in 7 years, you will lose half the carbon content of that soil.
And what will be the effect of that loss of carbon?
Carbon actually builds, in time, carbon builds fertility. So carbon, it's like you have, for instance, a compost heap in your backyard. You pour in leaves, that's your carbon, and you add moisture, and it breaks down that pile. So that's a C to N ratio working there. So the nitrogen is breaking down that carbon. So what's happening, and it's creating a soil. So you dig it away and that's new soil being developed. So breaking down carbon in a soil, depleting that carbon, is not good for the long-term health of the soil. You're breaking the structure of the soil, the humic content of the soil goes down, which is a reduction in nitrogen, a reduction in the capacity of the soil to feed the plants. So the future here in Cambodia should, I hope, follows a path of no-till agriculture, where we have cover on the soil, it protects it from rainfall, you're actually maintaining the integrity of the soil, and you come in with these machines, such as I've said is a no-till planter. It has a cutting disc on the front, and it slices through the soil, you drop your fertiliser behind, seed gets dropped behind, then you have these two wheels that basically seal the surface of that soil again. So
again, you know, here is Cambodia moving up with the technology. I wouldn't say advanced technology, but still the early part of a agriculture industrialization or mechanization, if I can say.
Mechanization is an important thing for Cambodia. It just drives efficiencies. The only problem, it's not a problem really, but the only issue is there is a lot of smallholder farms in Cambodia. Now,
how do you tackle that?
Well, we need to think of appropriate technologies that are suitable for smallholders. A good friend and colleague of mine who lives and works in Battambang, an Australian, has helped devise what's called a no-till planter that fits on the back of a two-wheel tractor. Now, a lot of farmers have 1 hectare, 2 hectares of farm. They can't really use large machines to come through that field. They could bring in contractors, and many people do that up in Pailin. They don't use animals to till their land anymore. They bring in contractors to dig up their soil. The same thing may eventually happen with planting. They could bring in contractors. Other people will want to do it themselves, and they can attach a no-till planter, which basically drops seed at appropriate spaces and depth.
So you mean that here there's opportunity from the business side also, that local Cambodian could actually get into the business of providing this sort of subcontracting, where they can afford to buy good machinery, which I think are expensive, but then through subcontracting they can recover. And the farmer, the smallholder, on their own would be able to access on a very limited payment, right, for that subcontracting. I think this is a good scenario for synergy, you know.
Certainly. Look, there's some innovative entrepreneurs now up in Paylin that buy a tractor and they just offer a service to help establish a crop.
Yeah.
One of the exciting areas, particular. Sorry, I'm concentrating on Paylin and Battambang, but that's the area of my interest.
That's a granary that's of Cambodia, so we should build on that.
One of the exciting future prospects in Paylin and Battambang, particularly in the corn sector, is mechanical harvesting. There is no mechanical harvesting going on right now in that part of the world.
So how do they harvest then?
By hand.
By hand.
Now think of this. Think of this. You have a team of workers going through the field, picking the corn, and when they get too much, they drop it there. They move on. They pick more corn, they drop it there.
Yeah.
That's one handling. Two, second handling is they come through, collect the corn, bag it up, sew it up in the field. Three, they lift those bags up, put it into a back of a truck, and take it to either the roadside or to a silo. When they get to the roadside, they then drop it, and then it gets picked up by a middleman, like a buyer. That's 3, 4, 5 handlings of this crop. So when you mechanically harvest, you cut. It cuts all the stover, which is the plant material, the brown plant material, shoots it at the back. You keep a cover on the surface, and you take all your corn away. Now you can throw that into a chase bin, into a bin, and then that can be transported directly to the silo. That's one handling.
But Stuart, here is the challenge I'm throwing to you is that, you know, Cambodia, we have a lot of these young people working in the field, right? I mean, the challenge is that if you, there's always this you know, paradox, you know, that we're looking to create job also.
Certainly.
So if you mechanize, what happened to the people who could have, yes, it's not efficient, but are there other alternatives to re-engage them in different form? For function that's been substituted by mechanization.
Well, look, when you introduce mechanization to agriculture, it breeds a whole range of other activities in the centre. So you need people to service those machines. You need people to act as dealers. And there are industries that we don't even know of that will be created in time by mechanization, by the influx of capital into that region.
So it's a diversion into new areas.
To say that mechanization will create unemployment in that region, I think is wrong.
It's wrong.
And also, it allows people the opportunity to engage in other activities. Agriculture is not exciting for young people.
Sure, I agree.
But it's exciting in terms of the future wealth that can be generated, the future trickle-down effect into other industries within that region.
You know, so for me, I'm for mechanization. I'm for advancing the value chain. I'm for extracting the value of what we produce, right? And it's clear that, you know, up to now, in many of the areas that you have mentioned there, up north, southwest, southeast, you know, many places are still in the subsistence mode. And as a country, right, if we are to move in a few more years to be a low middle income country, we will not be a least developed country, you know, 5, 6, 7 years down the road. The challenge is that you cannot, you know, continue to farm, to do agriculture in a subsistence mode. You have to move up the value chain. And the government policy is quite clear that, you know, we're moving from subsistence to mechanization, to increase productivity, diversification into different crop, rice being the driving force now in terms of agriculture sort of diversification, but it's driving a lot of mechanization in the process, right? So I see process here not just in the production, process in logistics, process in transport, process in trade facilitation, process in maritime port structure and everything. So to me, it's no different in the crop that you mentioned, corn or cassava. The trick is how do we find a good balance so that there be no loser in that process of industrialization, you know.
Correct.
So the government is in the process to develop its own industrial policy. And these are the things that is quite exciting from your perspective, you know. How do we find a good balance so that ultimately, you know, there be no real loser in that?
Well, Cambodia is in a unique time of history where you have the opportunity to learn from, I'll use Australia again as an example. You have an opportunity to learn from countries like Australia.
Yeah.
Now, we step back 150 years, 100 years.
Yes, yes.
We cleared the landscape like there was no tomorrow.
Yes.
Once mechanization came in after World War II, vast areas of land that could not be cleared by animals and people before was cleared by great big bulldozers with a chain between the two and ripped out lots and lots of country. Now, we're paying the penalty for that now in Australia.
Is that right?
We spend billions of dollars a year reintroducing vegetation to the landscape. So here's an opportunity for Cambodia. Take what's happened in Australia as a lesson learned.
Yes, yes.
Don't just clear fell everything for the sake of making a lot of money.
Yeah.
There are opportunities here to look at the natural landscape and the productive landscape side by side, see how there can be a synergy between the two. So, for example, if you have a 10,000 hectare concession, generally you can't use all of that concession because there's some hill country, there's some lowland swamps, there's creek lines between. What you need to do, though, is to identify the valuable parts of that landscape, not just economically, also naturally. So you identify the creek lines, and you don't clear right up to the creek. Don't push trees into the creek. Creeks are very important parts of the landscape. Set some natural vegetation back from that and ensure that you have clean water being filtrated through that waterway system. Identify what are high value conservation areas on that farm, and identify what are the highly productive parts of that farm and use that highly productive parts intensively. Make your good money out of those areas and then preserve other parts of the landscape. Why would you want to preserve parts of the landscape? Well, it creates a great mosaic of different land uses. You have birds, insects, small mammals making their way through these corridors. They connect up one part of the landscape, a sizable bit of vegetation up on a hillside, with another sizable bit of vegetation. If you clear all that, those animals and insects and bats and birds are isolated. Why do you want to let them get from there to there? Well, bats and birds can form some sort of, they're predators on insects. That may have some benefit to your property in terms of pest control. Bats and birds, again, predate on small mammals, such as rats and mice. Again, potentially some benefit for the property. So don't just think of things in isolation. Natural vegetation needs to be cleared and I want to make money on there. Identify what are the key parts of the landscape and use that landscape appropriately. So that's a lesson that could be learned in Cambodia, and they have a huge opportunity to do it here because the economic land concession model is very different to other parts of Southeast Asia. So there's large tracts of land, and that's very attractive to international investors. But a lot of international investors I've spoken to don't want to have the controversy of clearing natural landscapes or native, high conservation areas. They have a social responsibility to their shareholders back in Singapore, London, Australia. And they want to be able to have a good story and say that we're making money on this property, but we're doing it responsibly.
So I think one of the things that I catch from your last, intervention there is that there are money to be made when you do the right thing. When you protect your environment, when you protect the ecosystem. That there are lessons learned from other countries who are now paying billions of dollars of price 150 years later. For things they should not have done, but in those days they don't know.
Correct. Right. That's right.
And to me, in today's time, with access to information, globalization, internet, website, and everything, we should not make the mistake that Australia made 150 years ago.
That's why I'm saying you have a unique opportunity here to do things differently.
So in that sense, I can retain that Cambodia has a good opportunity to move up the value chain. You know, there are lessons to be learned, how to do the right thing. And, you know, mechanization should be on the way if it is to transform Cambodia agriculture from a pure subsistence that we've done for hundreds of years in propelling Cambodia economic growth into at least the next several years into a sort of like a lower middle income. And on that point, I want to say thank you to you for taking the time to share, even though a short period, on what you see the prospect of moving up the agriculture, something you call Cambodia agriculture in transition. But you know, when we speak of transition, we speak about moving toward, you know, a better end, right? So in that sense, I want to say thank you for that.
Thank you.
So Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the end of the program. It's a short one on a topic as vast-ranging, as difficult, as complex as agriculture, as ecosystem, as you know, economic land concession, as you know, about bats, birds, insects. But I hope you got the key message from that. That Cambodia agriculture is in transition, but you know, we're looking to mechanize, but we have to find a balance so that mechanization do not sort of you know, displace the people in the countryside, you know, out of job. But the other thing that I get also is that young Cambodians are not interested in agriculture, but perhaps they should be interested in the mechanization, in the industrialization of agriculture, where they can apply their knowledge, their expertise, their use, their effort, you know, to improve the Cambodia agriculture value chain. So on that note, I hope you find this discussion quite helpful and useful for your life, or for your environment, for your community, for your ministry. So good night, and I will see you again next week. Goodbye.